"Don't you dare me," she breathed, blue eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Enzo Moretti, heir to an empire built on blood and secrets, just smirked, thought it was a game. He hadn't a clue. 5 seconds. That's all it would take for her to turn his world upside down. The man thought he could break her. Let him. She was a waitress, sure, barely scraping by. But she was also the forgotten stitch in a tapestry of lies, and she carried a kindness that burned brighter than his billions. He'll soon discover that she isn't some pawn. Her quiet dignity? It's a loaded gun. They haven't a clue what's coming. "Sir, don't dare me," she whispered, eyes blazing like blue fire. He laughed, thinking it was a game. He didn't know that in the next 5 seconds, his empire, his heart, and his darkest secrets would be at the mercy of the one woman he couldn't buy. And the twist. She wasn't just a waitress. She was the one loose end his family forgot to cut. The humidity in New York City was stifling, but inside the Gilded Lily, the air was kept at a crisp, expensive aciditetschte. It smelled of old money, imported leather, and the specific kind of desperation that comes from people trying to impress people who didn't care. Sienna Cole adjusted her apron, wincing as the stiff fabric rubbed against a bruise on her hip. A souvenir from moving her sofa into a smaller, Greer apartment earlier that morning. She was 24, running on caffeine and sheer will. Her rent was late, her younger sister's tuition was due, and her manager, Bernie, was watching her like a hawk, circling a dying rabbit. "Table 4, Sienna," Bernie hissed, snapping his fingers. "The VIP section. Don't mess this up. They've ordered the 8 to a Shadow Margot. If you drop it, I'll sell your kidney." Sienna blew a stray lock of dark hair out of her eyes. "Relax, Bernie. I haven't dropped a bottle since I was 19. She picked up the silver tray, her hand steady, and navigated through the dimly lit room. The VIP booth was a semicircle of black velvet, occupied by 3 men in suits that cost more than Sienna's entire life earnings. In the center sat the king. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew the type. He was devastatingly Italian. Dark hair swept back a jawline that looked carved from marble, and eyes the color of espresso, dark, bitter, and intense. He wasn't laughing like his sycophants. He was bored. He looked at the room with a predator's disdain, twirling a heavy gold signet ring on his pinky finger. This was Enzo Moretti, the man who had just acquired half of the waterfront property in Manhattan, the man known in business circles as Il Squalo, the Shark. Sienna approached the table. "Good evening, gentlemen." "The Margot." She presented the bottle. The 2 men on the side stopped talking to ogle her, their eyes raking over her uniform. Sienna was used to it. She had the kind of sharp, striking beauty that men wanted to break high cheekbones, and eyes that were intelligent and guarded. Enzo didn't look up. He was typing on his phone. "Pour," he commanded, his voice, a low baritone that vibrated through the air. He didn't even check the label. Sienna uncorked the wine with practiced grace. She poured a taste into his glass. Enzo finally looked up, not at her face, but at her hand. "Stop," he said. Sienna froze. "Sir." The glass. Enzo said, his accent thick and smooth like velvet wrapped around a knife. "It has a smudge." Sienna looked. There was a microscopic fingerprint near the stem. "I apologize. Let me fetch a fresh one immediately." "No," Enzo said. He picked up the glass of thousand wine and deliberately tipped his hand. The dark red liquid poured onto the pristine white tablecloth, splashing onto Sienna's apron and shoes. The table went silent. The music seemed to stop. "You are clumsy." Enzo stated his face, a mask of arrogant indifference. "Clean it up. And while you are down there, Wipe my shoes. You got wine on them. It was a power play, a test. He wanted to see how low she would go for a tip. He was used to people bending. He was used to breaking spirits just to see the pieces scatter. Sienna stared at the red stain spreading on the cloth, the exhaustion of the last month. The eviction notices the double shifts. The hunger surged up her throat. But it didn't taste like tears. It tasted like rage. She placed the bottle down on the table with a heavy thud. "No," she said. The man to Enzo's left gasped. "Excuse me?" Enzo's eyes narrowed. He finally looked at her face. "Really?" Looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes, the set of her jaw. "Excuse me," Enzo repeated softly. "I said, no," Sienna said, her voice trembling slightly but gaining strength. "I will bring you a towel. I will bring you a new glass. But I'm not wiping your shoes. I serve food, sir. I do not serve your ego." Enzo stood up. He towered over her 6'3" of pure intimidation. The air between them crackled with electricity. "Do you know who I am?" "Ragatina." "I don't care if you're the Pope," Sienna snapped. "You poured that wine on purpose." Enzo stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I can have you fired in 10 seconds. I can make sure you never work in this city again." Sienna didn't back down. She tilted her chin up. "Sir, don't dare me. I have nothing left to lose, and that makes me dangerous. So, sit down, drink your wine, and treat me with human decency, or I will walk out that door, and you can serve yourself." For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Enzo stared at her, stunned. No one absolutely so spoke to him like that. Not his board of directors, not his enemies, and certainly not a waitress with a stain on her apron. A slow, dark smirk touched his lips. "Dangerous," he murmured. "I like dangerous." Then Bernie, the manager, came sprinting over, pale as a ghost. "Mr. Moretti, I am so sorry, Sienna. Get out. You're fired. Get out right now." Sienna ripped off her apron and threw it onto the wine-soaked table. She looked Enzo dead in the eye. "Enjoy the stain. It matches your soul." She turned on her heel and stormed out, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had just lost her livelihood. She was doomed. Enzo Moretti watched her go, the smirk fading into a look of calculating obsession. He pulled out his phone. "Giovanni," he said into the receiver. "Follow her. Find out everything. Who she is, where she lives, and how much debt she has." "Yes, boss." "Is she a threat?" "No," Enzo said, watching the door swing shut. "She's the solution." 3 days later, Sienna was sitting on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes. The air smelled of dust and defeat. The eviction notice was taped to the door, a bright orange flag of surrender. She had applied to 5 restaurants. All of them had turned her down. It was as if she had been blacklisted. Bernie, she thought bitterly. He must have called around. Her phone buzzed. It was the hospital. Her sister Lily, Miss Cole. The nurse's voice was sympathetic but firm. "We need to discuss the payment plan for Lily's therapy." The last check bounced. I know. Sienna squeezed her eyes shut, fighting back tears. "I'm transferring funds today. Please just don't stop the treatment." She hung up, staring at a bank account that had exactly $42 in it. She was drowning. A knock on the door made her jump. It wasn't the landlord. It was a rhythmic, authoritative knock. Sienna opened the door, standing in her hallway, looking absurdly out of place. Amidst the peeling wallpaper was a man in a black suit. He was older, with graying hair and a scar running down his cheek. "Miss Sienna Cole, who asking her?" she said, gripping the door handle. "My employer would like a word." "He is waiting in the car. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." She tried to slam the door. but the man caught it with a hand that felt like iron. "He can pay your sister's medical bills in full today." Sienna froze. The air left her lungs. "How do you know about that? Mr. Moretti knows everything." "Moretti? The man from the club? The shark?" Anger flared hot and bright, but it was doused by the reality of Lily's hospital bills. Sienna grabbed her coat. "Fine, let's go." Down on the street, a sleek black Maybach idled against the curb, looking like a spaceship parked in a slum. The driver opened the back door. Enzo Moretti was sitting inside, reading a tablet. He didn't look up as she slid onto the leather seat. The car smelled of that same expensive cologne, sandalwood, and cold ambition. "You ruined my life," Sienna said, skipping the pleasantries. "You got me blacklisted." Enzo tapped the screen of his tablet and finally turned to her. In the daylight, he was even more striking, his features sharp and predatory. "I didn't get you blacklisted, Sienna. I simply ensured you were available." "Available for what?" "To shine your shoes." "I have people for that," Enzo said smoothly. "I need something else. Something money usually can't buy. But in your case, I think we can make an exception." The car began to move, gliding silently through traffic. "I'm listening," she said, crossing her arms. "My grandfather, the patriarch of the Moretti family, is dying," Enzo said, his voice devoid of emotion. "In his will, he has left the control of the entire Moretti shipping conglomerate to me with one condition." He paused, studying her face. "I must be married, or at least engaged to be married, to a woman of strong character. He believes I am too ruthless. He wants a woman who can tame me." He let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Old-fashioned nonsense." "So hire an actress," Sienna said. "I did. She ran away crying after 2 days. I have a difficult reputation. My family is essentially a pit of vipers. They will eat a weak woman alive. I need someone who isn't afraid of me. Someone who looks at a billionaire and says, 'Don't dare me.'" He locked eyes with her. "I need you, Sienna. I need you to pose as my fiancée for 3 months until the will is executed and the company is mine." Sienna laughed a harsh sound. "You are insane. You treated me like dirt. And now you want me to play house?" "No." Enzo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a check. He placed it on the leather seat between them. Sienna looked down. The number of zeros made her dizzy. It was enough to pay for Lily's treatment for 5 years. It was enough to buy a house. It was enough to be free. "That is the advance," Enzo said. "You get double that when we finish, plus full protection for your sister, the best doctors in Switzerland." Sienna's hand hovered over the check. Her pride was screaming no, but her love for her sister was screaming yes. "What are the rules?" she asked, her voice low. "Strictly business," Enzo said, his eyes darkening. "You live in my penthouse. You wear the clothes I buy. You accompany me to Italy next week to meet the family. You convince them you love me. You convince them you can handle me. And in private you stay out of my way. We do not touch. We do not talk unless necessary. And you never ever ask about my business dealings." Sienna picked up the check. It felt heavy, like it was made of lead. "One condition," she said. Enzo raised an eyebrow. "You are in no position to bargain." "I am if you want the girl who stood up to you. If I'm just a paid employee, I'll act like one. But if you want me to be your equal in front of your family, you have to treat me like one. No snapping fingers, no public humiliation. And if you ever pour wine on me again, I will break the bottle over your head." Enzo stared at her. The corner of his mouth twitched. Was that a smile? No, it was something more dangerous. It was respect. "Agreed," he said. He extended a hand. Welcome to hell, Karamia. Sienna shook his hand. His grip was warm and firm, sending a jolt of electricity up her arm that she wasn't expecting. As the car sped toward the Manhattan skyline, Sienna looked out the window. She thought she had saved herself from poverty. She had no idea she had just signed a contract with the devil himself. And she certainly didn't know that in Italy, the Moretti family didn't just fire people they didn't like, they made them disappear. The car turned a corner and Enzo's phone rang. He answered it in Italian. His voice changed. It became lethal. "Si la, no lon." "Yes, it is done. The girl is with me." "No, she knows nothing." Sienna caught the tone, if not the words. A cold shiver went down her spine. "What don't I know?" she thought. She looked at Enzo, but he was staring straight ahead, his face a mask of stone. The game had begun. The private jet touched down on a runway carved into the side of a cliff in Tuscany. Below them, the Mediterranean Sea crashed against jagged rocks, sending up sprays of white foam that looked deceptive from this height. Beautiful, but deadly. Sienna stepped onto the tarmac, the wind whipping the silk of her new dress around her legs. Enzo had spent the last 48 hours transforming her. The worn-out Waitress sneakers were gone, replaced by handmade Italian heels. Her hair, usually tied back in a messy bun, had been styled into glossy, dark waves. She looked like money. She felt like an imposter. "Chin up," Enzo murmured, appearing beside her. He placed a hand on the small of her back. It was a possessive gesture designed for the audience of black-suited men waiting by the convoy of SUVs. "Remember, you are the one woman who tamed the shark. You do not look at the ground. You look through them. I feel like I'm walking to the gallows," Sienna whispered back, forcing a smile for the guards. "The gallows would be quicker," Enzo said grimly. "Welcome to Villa Oscura." The drive to the estate was silent. When the iron gates opened, Sienna gasped. It wasn't just a house. It was a fortress of stone and ivy, ancient and imposing, sitting atop the hill like a brooding gargoyle. As they walked through the massive oak doors, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Enzo!" A voice rang out sharp as breaking glass. A woman descended the grand staircase. She was beautiful in a severe way, wearing a black dress that looked like mourning wear, though no one had died yet. This was Luciana, Enzo's aunt. Behind her trailed a younger man with a face that mirrored Enzo's, but softer, weaker, his cousin, Dante. Aunt Luciana. Enzo nodded, his face a mask. Dante. Luciana stopped 3 steps from the bottom, her eyes locking onto Sienna like a laser sight. "So, this is the creature you've dragged in from New York." "This is my fiancée, Sienna," Enzo said, his voice hardening. "And you will speak to her with Richt." Luciana laughed, a cold, tinkling sound. "We shall see if she earns it. Grandfather is waiting in the library. He wants to see the girl alone." Sienna felt her stomach drop. "Alone?" Enzo tightened his grip on her waist. "No, she goes with me." The Dawn gave an order. "Enzo." Dante spoke up, his voice oily. "You know what happens when we defy him?" Enzo looked at Sienna. For the first time since they met, she saw a flicker of hesitation in his dark eyes. He leaned down his lips, brushing her ear. "He is old, but he is sharp," Enzo whispered. "Do not lie to him, but do not tell him the truth about the contract. If he senses weakness, he will crush you. Act like you own the place." Sienna swallowed hard. "I handle drunk frat boys at 2:00 a.m. Enzo, I can handle a geriatric billionaire." Enzo pulled back, looking at her with that strange mix of annoyance and admiration. "Go." Sienna walked into the library alone. The room smelled of cigar smoke and old paper. Sitting in a leather wing-back chair by the fireplace was Don Carlo Moretti. He was frail, and oxygen tube running under his nose, but his eyes were alive black pits of intelligence. "Come closer," he wheezed. Sienna walked forward, stopping on the Persian rug. She didn't curtsy. She didn't tremble. She stood with her hands clasped loosely, waiting. "You are the waitress," Don Carlo said. It wasn't a question. "I was a waitress," Sienna corrected. "Now I am the woman who is going to marry your grandson." "Why?" The old man leaned forward. "Enzo is a monster. I made him one. He has no heart. Why do you want him?" "For the money," Sienna thought fast. If she said she loved him, he'd know she was lying. This man knew his grandson too well. "I don't want his money. I have my own pride," Sienna said, channeling the anger she felt that night at the club. "And I don't care if he has a heart or not. I want him because he is the only man I've met who is strong enough to handle me. I was bored." "Don Carlo." "Enzo is not boring." The old man stared at her for a long, agonizing minute. Then he threw his head back and cackled. The sound turned into a coughing fit. "Bored?" He wheezed. "She says she was bored." "Ben, good. You have fire. Luciana has ice in her veins. Dante has water. Enzo has steel. But you have fire." He motioned her away. "Go. Dinner is at 8. Do not disappoint me. If you use the wrong fork, Luciana will eat you alive." The dinner was an execution disguised as a meal. The dining room was lit by 100 candles. The table was set with enough silverware to perform a surgery. Luciana sat across from Sienna, watching her every move. "So, Sienna," Luciana began slicing her V with surgical precision. "Tell us about your family. Who are your people?" "The Coles. I do not know that name. Are they in banking?" "They are in survival," Sienna said calmly, taking a sip of wine. "Charming," Dante sneered. "So poverty, Dante," Enzo warned, his hand clenching on the table. "It is fine, Enzo," Sienna said, placing a hand over his. His skin was hot. She looked at Dante. "My father died when I was young. My mother worked 2 jobs. I know the value of $1, unlike some who have never earned one." Dante's face flushed red. Luciana narrowed her eyes. She signaled the sommelier. "Let us test her palate. Since she served wine, surely she knows it." The sommelier poured a glass of amber liquid. "Tell me, Cara." Luciana smiled wickedly. "What is this? If you get it wrong, perhaps you should go back to the kitchen where you belong." Enzo looked ready to flip the table. He knew Sienna knew nothing about vintage Italian dessert wines. Sienna lifted the glass. She swirled it. She smelled it. Apricot. Honey. A distinct, sharp, metallic tang of volcanic soil. She remembered Bernie, her old manager, lecturing her once about a very specific, very rare bottle they kept locked in the safe, a bottle she had dusted 1,000 times. "It's a 1996 Vincanto," Sienna said clearly, "from the Agnoni estate," but she paused, taking a tiny sip. She wrinkled her nose slightly. "But what?" Luciana demanded. "It's Kikid," Sienna stated. "Just slightly. The finish is vinegar. You really shouldn't serve this to the dawn. It's an insult." Silence slammed into the room. The sommelier turned pale. He tasted the wine. His eyes widened. She is right, Senora. The bottle is compromised. I am so sorry." Don Carlo let out a bark of laughter from the head of the table. "She humiliated you, Luciana, with a bad bottle of wine." Enzo looked at Sienna. His expression was unreadable, but under the table, his hand found her knee and squeezed hard. It wasn't sexual, it was an anchor. Sienna held Luciana's gaze. She had won the battle, but as she watched Luciana slice into her meat with renewed violence, she knew the war had just begun. Later that night, the adrenaline crashed. Sienna stood in the center of the master suite. It was massive, with a balcony overlooking the dark sea. There was predictably only one bed, a 4-poster monstrosity draped in silk. Enzo locked the heavy oak door and turned to her. He loosened his tie, looking exhausted. The shark looked human for a moment. "You did well," he said. "Better than well. You gutted Dante without raising your voice." "Your aunt hates me," Sienna said, hugging her arms. She felt cold now. "Luciana hates everyone, but she fears you now." "That is better." Enzo walked to the minibar and poured 2 whizzies. He handed one to her. "Drink, you're shaking." Sienna took the glass. "I'm not shaking. You are." Enzo stepped closer. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jaw. For a second, the air in the room grew heavy, charged with the same electricity that had been there in the club. Sienna looked up at him. He was dangerous, yes, but he was also the only person in this house who wasn't trying to actively destroy her. "Where do I sleep?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "On the bed," Enzo said. "I will take the sofa." "The sofa is 5 ft long, Enzo. You're over 6 ft. I don't sleep much anyway." He turned away, breaking the spell. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is the hunt. We ride at dawn." Sienna didn't argue. She changed into the silk pajamas he had provided and climbed into the massive bed. She thought she wouldn't sleep, but exhaustion pulled her under. The nightmare. She was back in her old apartment, but it was dark. Someone was banging on the door. "Open up! We know you have it!" Her father was there crying. "I'm sorry, Sienna. I'm so sorry." Then the door splintered. "No!" Sienna gasped, shooting up in bed. She was drenched in sweat. The room was dark, lit only by the moonlight. Sienna. Enzo was there instantly. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, looking at her with concern. "You were screaming." Sienna shivered, and the terror of the dream still clinging to her. Just a bad dream." Enzo didn't move away. He looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face. "You called out a name." "Richard?" Sienna froze. "He was my father." Enzo went very still. "Richard Cole." "Yes." "Why?" Enzo stood up abruptly, walking to the window. His back was a landscape of muscle and tension. "Nothing. Go back to sleep." But Sienna was awake now, and she was suspicious. "Enzo, why did you react to his name?" I said. "Go to sleep." He snapped, his voice harsh. Sienna didn't sleep. She lay there watching him pace on the balcony, smoking a cigarette. Why did the billionaire heir know the name of her dead, broke father? The next morning, the estate was bustling. It was the day of the hunt, a barbaric tradition where the family rode horses into the woods to shoot pheasants. C refused to shoot, but she had to ride. "Do you know how to ride?" Enzo asked as they walked to the stables. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. "I grew up in Kentucky before we moved to New York." Sienna said, "I can ride." Inside the stables, the smell of hay and leather was comforting, but the atmosphere was tense. Dante was there saddling a massive black stallion. "Good morning, cousin," Dante smirked. "And the little waitress? I hope you are ready. The trails are treacherous." Enzo ignored him. He led Sienna to a white mare. "This is Bella. She is gentle. Stay close to me." Sienna mounted the horse. She felt good, high up in control. The hunt began. The group thundered out of the gates, galloping toward the forest. Enzo stayed right beside her, his eyes scanning the trees, not looking for birds, but looking for threats. They reached a clearing near the edge of a ravine. The drop was steep, hundreds of feet down to the rocks. "Let's pick up the pace," Dante yelled, kicking his horse. Sienna urged Bella forward. Suddenly, she felt the saddle slip. It happened in slow motion. The girth strap, the leather belt holding the saddle to the horse, snapped. Sienna lost her balance. She slid sideways. The horse, spooked by the shifting weight, reared up. "Sienna!" Enzo roared. She was falling toward the ravine edge. She kicked her feet free of the stirrups just in time, hitting the ground hard. She rolled, the breath knocked out of her, stopping just 2 feet from the precipice. Loose rocks clattered down into the abyss. Bella the horse bolted. Sienna lay in the dirt, gasping. Hooves thundered toward her. Enzo leapt off his horse while it was still moving. He hit the ground and scrambled to her, pulling her away from the edge and into his arms. "Are you hurt?" He was shouting his hands frantically, checking her for broken bones. "Answer me." I'm okay," Sienna wheezed. "The saddle, it just gave way." Enzo looked at the saddle lying in the dirt. He walked over to it and picked it up. He inspected the leather strap. It hadn't snapped from wear and tear. It had been cut cleanly halfway through so it would break under stress. Enzo turned to the group. Dante had pulled up his horse a few yards away, watching with a fainted look of shock. Enzo walked up to Dante's horse. He didn't say a word. He reached up, grabbed Dante by the lapel of his hunting jacket, and ripped him out of the saddle. Dante hit the ground with a thud. Enzo was on him instantly, a fist drawn back. "Enzo, no!" Sienna scrambled up, grabbing Enzo's arm. "Don't not here." Enzo was breathing like a bull. His eyes were murderous. "He tried to kill you." "I know," Sienna whispered, her voice trembling. "But if you kill him now, you lose everything. The company, the will, everything." Enzo looked at Dante, who was cowering in the dirt, bleeding from the lip. Then he looked at Sienna. The rage in his eyes slowly cooled into something colder, more calculated. He released Dante, shoving him back into the mud. "If you ever," Enzo said, his voice low enough that only they could hear, "touch what is mine again, I will not kill you. I will peel you apart, piece by piece." He turned to Sienna. He didn't care about the contract anymore. He didn't care about the rules. He scooped her up into his arms, carrying her bridal style. "We are going back," he commanded his guards. As he carried her back toward the villa, Sienna rested her head against his chest. She could hear his heart hammering, but her mind was racing. Richard Colenso knew her father. Someone tried to kill her. When they got back to the suite, Enzo placed her on the bed. He went to the bathroom to get a first aid kit for the scrape on her arm. While he was gone, Sienna saw his phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was a message from an unknown number. She knew she shouldn't look, but the adrenaline made her reckless. She glanced at the screen. The text read, "Does she know yet? If she finds out her father didn't just die, but that he was executed by your grandfather, she will burn this house down." Sienna stared at the phone, the blood draining from her face. Her father hadn't died of a heart attack, as the police said. He was executed by the Moretz, and Enzo knew. The bathroom door opened. Enzo walked out, holding a bandage. He stopped when he saw her face. He saw the phone in her hand. The silence that filled the room was heavier than the ocean outside. "Sienna," Enzo said, his voice dead. "You killed him," she whispered, backing away until her back hit the headboard. "Your family killed my father." Enzo dropped the bandage. He didn't deny it. "Let me explain," he said, taking a step forward. "Don't dare me," she said, her voice breaking, echoing the words she said the first night they met. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a plea. "Don't dare come near me." Sienna Cole wasn't just a fake fiancée anymore. She was a target, and she was sleeping in the bed of the enemy. Sienna didn't scream. She didn't cry. The revelation that she was sleeping in the house of her father's murderers turned her blood to ice. She looked at Enzo, who stood like a statue in the center of the room, the bandage still dangling from his hand. "You knew," she said, her voice eerily calm. "The whole time, you didn't hire me because I had attitude. You hired me because I'm Richard Cole's daughter. Sienna, listen to me." Enzo started reaching for her. "Don't." She grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the nightstand and hurled it. It smashed against the wall inches from his head, shattering into 1,000 diamonds. "Stay back, you monster. He was my dad. He was a gentle, kind man who sold insurance. He was the accountant for the Moretti crime syndicate for 20 years. Enzo roared, his voice cracking the air. The silence that followed was deafening. Sienna's hands trembled. "What?" "Your father," Enzo said, stepping over the broken glass, "was the only man who knew where the bodies were buried, figuratively and literally. He managed the offshore accounts, he laundered the money, and then he stole 10 million and tried to run." Sienna shook her head, tears finally spilling over. "Liar, we were poor. We had nothing." "He didn't steal it for himself," Enzo said, his voice softening. "He stole it to get you and Lily out. He wanted to buy new identities. But my grandfather found out the penalty for theft in this family is death." Sienna felt the room spinning. "So you killed him?" "I was 22, Enzo said, his face tormented. "I was just a soldier then. I begged my grandfather for mercy. He gave the order. I couldn't stop it." "You're sick," Sienna whispered. She backed toward the door, unlocked it, and ran. "See, wait. You can't leave the room. It's not safe." She didn't listen. She sprinted down the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the cold marble. She had to get out. She had to get to the police. But as she reached the grand staircase, she realized the absurdity of her plan. The police in this town were on the Moretti payroll. There was nowhere to go. She needed a phone that wasn't monitored. She needed a car. She turned towards the servants' quarters, hoping to find a back exit. The corridors here were narrower, darker. She heard voices coming from the kitchen. She froze, pressing herself into the shadows of a linen closet. It was Dante and Luciana. "The girl is a problem," Luciana was saying, her voice low and venomous. "If she survives the weekend, the Dawn will sign the papers. Enzo will have the empire." "Not if Enzo has an accident," Dante replied. "The brakes on his car are already taken care of for tomorrow's drive to the coast." Sienna clamped a hand over her mouth. They weren't just trying to kill her. They were going to kill Enzo. "And the girl?" Dante asked. "She knows too much now." Luciana sighed as if discussing a pest problem. "Tonight at the masquerade ball, we will spike her drink. A simple overdose. Tragic. The poor waitress couldn't handle the high life." Sienna's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had to warn him. She hated him. She despised him. But she couldn't let him die. Not like this. She turned to run back the way she came, but she collided with a wall of muscle. Her hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. She was dragged backward into the darkness of a secret alcove. She kicked and scratched, fighting for her life. "Shh!" A voice hissed in her ear. "It's me!" It was Enzo. He spun her around, his eyes blazing in the gloom. "I told you not to leave the room. Do you have a death wish?" Sienna pushed his hand away, gasping. "They are going to kill you. Dante cut your brakes, and they're going to poison me at the ball tonight." Enzo went still. The anger vanished from his face, replaced by a terrifying calm. "I know. I know Dante is plotting. I expected the brakes, but the poison." He looked at her, and for a second, the shark looked vulnerable. "I didn't think they would move on you so quickly." "We have to leave," Sienna pleaded. "Right now, we can take the back roads." "We can't," Enzo said grimly. "The gates are locked at night. The guards are loyal to my grandfather, not me. If we run, we look guilty. We look like we have something to hide. And if we leave, I lose the company. If I lose the company, I lose the power to protect you and your sister. He grabbed her shoulders. We have to go to that ball, Sienna. Are you insane? They want to kill us. Exactly. Enzo smirked, a dark, dangerous expression returning to his face. So, we are going to give them a show. They will never forget. You wanted to know why I picked you. Because you are a fighter. Tonight, I don't need a fiancé. I need a partner. He pulled a key from his pocket. But first, he said, I have to show you the rest of the truth about your father. I don't want to hear any more lies. No lies, Enzo said. Just a ghost. He led her not upstairs but down a spiral staircase, hidden behind a tapestry, deep into the foundations of the Villa Oscura. The air grew cold and damp. Where are we going? Sienna whispered. The crypt, Enzo said. Where the Moretts bury their dead, Sienna shuddered. Was he going to kill her here? Was this the end? They reached a heavy iron door. Enzo unlocked it. Inside it wasn't a tomb. It was a cell, but it was furnished. There was a bed, a bookshelf, and a small TV. A man was sitting on the bed reading a book. He looked older, thinner, his hair completely white, but Sienna knew him instantly. Dad, she choked out. The man looked up. His book fell to the floor. Sienna! Sienna collapsed. Enzo caught her before she hit the stone floor. He's alive, she sobbed, staring at the impossible sight. You said he was executed. The order was given, Enzo said, his voice rough. I was the one sent to do it. I couldn't. I faked the photos. I faked the burial. I've been hiding him down here for 2 years, keeping him safe from my grandfather. Richard Cole rushed to the bars. Sienna, baby. Oh, God. You shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous. Sienna reached through the bars, clutching her father's hand. It was warm. It was real. She turned to look at Enzo. She had called him a monster. She had hated him. But he had saved the only family she had left, risking his own life every single day for 2 years to keep a secret that could get him killed. Why? She asked Enzo, tears streaming down her face. Why did you save him? You didn't even know me. Enzo looked at Richard, then at Sienna. Because I wanted to know what it felt like, he said quietly, to save a life instead of destroying one. He checked his watch. We have to go. If we are missing for too long, Luciana will get suspicious. Say your goodbyes. We are getting him out tonight. How? Richard asked. The guards are everywhere. Tonight is the masquerade, Enzo said. Everyone will be wearing masks, including you, Richard. The ballroom of Villa Oscura was a sea of silk, velvet, and diamonds. A string quartet played haunting waltzes in the corner. The air smelled of expensive perfume and treachery. Every guest wore a mask, elaborate Venetian masks with feathers, gold leaf, and long beaks. It was a beautiful nightmare. Sienna stood at the top of the stairs, her arm linked through Enzo's. She wore a gown of blood-red satin that clung to her curves like a second skin. Her mask was black lace, covering her eyes, but leaving her determined jaw exposed. Enzo wore a tuxedo as black as his soul, with a simple black domino mask. He looked devastating. Ready? He whispered. No, she admitted. But let's do it anyway. Remember the plan, Enzo murmured. Don't eat anything. Don't drink anything. Stay by my side. At midnight, when the fireworks start, we move. They descended the stairs. All eyes turned to them. The shark and his conquest. Luciana glided towards them, wearing a silver mask that made her look like a bird of prey. Enzo, she cooped. And the lovely Sienna, you look flushed. Are you feeling well? Never better. Luciana, Sienna said, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. I'm just excited for the toast. Yes. Luciana's eyes glittered behind the mask. The toast. I have prepared a special vintage just for you. Sienna felt Enzo's arm tense. We would be honored, Enzo said smoothly. They moved onto the dance floor. Enzo pulled Sienna close. His hand was hot on her waist. They moved together perfectly, a tango of tension. Do you see him? Enzo whispered in her ear. Sienna scanned the room. In the shadows near the orchestra, a figure in a hooded monk's robe and a full-face white mask was standing quietly. The monk, Sienna whispered. Is that him? Yes, Enzo said. That's your father. At the signal, my driver, the one who brought you to the apartment, will create a distraction at the front gate. The guards will run. We take your father out the back to the boat cove. And you? Sienna asked, looking up at him. What happens to you? I stay, Enzo said. I have to finish this. Enzo, no. They'll kill you. If I leave, they will hunt us all down. If I stay and take control, I can end it. I can dissolve the illegal operations. I can make the company clean. I can set you free. Sienna realized then that she didn't want to fall to be set free, not if it meant leaving him behind. The music stopped. The grandfather clock chimed. It was time for the speeches. Don Carlo was wheeled out onto the balcony overlooking the ballroom. The room fell silent. My friends, the old man wheezed into a microphone. Tonight we celebrate the future. My grandson Enzo is to be married, and under the terms of my will, he shall inherit the empire. There was polite applause. Dante stood in the corner, his face twisting with rage behind his gold mask. However, Don Carlo continued his voice, turning raspy. I have received disturbing news. News that my grandson is marrying. A fraud. Sienna froze. Luciana stepped forward, holding a folder. She ripped off her mask. This woman, Luciana announced, her voice ringing through the hall, is not a socialite. She is a waitress, a porpa, and worst of all, she is the daughter of the traitor, Richard Cole. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The guests backed away from Sienna and Enzo as if they were contagious. She is a spy, Dante shouted. She is here to destroy us. Enzo stepped in front of Sienna, shielding her with his body. Grandfather, this is irrelevant. The contract said I needed a wife. It didn't specify her pedigree. It specified loyalty. Don Carlo slammed his fist on his wheelchair. And you brought the daughter of a thief into my house. Guards, seize them. 6 men in black suits materialized from the crowd, guns drawn. Sienna's heart stopped. The plan was ruined. The distraction hadn't happened yet. Wait, Sienna screamed, stepping out from behind Enzo. See, stop! Enzo hissed. You want the truth? Sienna yelled at the old man. Yes, I am Richard Cole's daughter, and yes, I came here for money. But you know why your grandson brought me? She walked toward the balcony, ignoring the guns pointed at her chest. Because he is the only one of you who isn't a coward. You kill people from your offices. Luciana poisons people's wine. Dante cuts break lines. But Enzo looked me in the eye and gave me a choice. She turned to Enzo. She reached up and took off his mask, revealing his face to the room. He tried to save me, she said softly, just like he saved. She stopped. She couldn't reveal her father. If she did, they would kill him right there in the ballroom. But it was too late. Dante laughed, just like he saved who? The money, the reputation. Enzo is weak. He has always been weak. Dante pulled a pistol from his jacket. He wasn't aiming at Enzo. He was aiming at Sienna. Say goodbye to your little waitress cousin. Bang! The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Sienna flinched, waiting for the pain, waiting for the darkness. But she didn't fall. Across the room, Dante dropped his gun. He clutched his shoulder, screaming as blood bloomed on his white jacket. Everyone turned. Standing by the orchestra, The figure in the monk's robe held a smoking revolver. He pulled off his white mask. "Hello, Carlo," Richard Cole said, his voice steady. "I believe you're sitting in my chair." The room erupted into chaos. "Richard!" Don Carlo gasped, clutching his chest. You are dead. Enzo is a better magician than you gave him credit for," Richard said, keeping the gun trained on the guards. "Now, Enzo, go run." Enzo grabbed Sienna's hand. They sprinted across the ballroom floor, weaving through the screaming guests. The guards hesitated, confused by the resurrection of a dead man. "We can't leave him," Sienna screamed, looking back at her father. "My men have him," Enzo shouted. "Look!" From the kitchen doors, 4 men burst in Enzo's loyal security team from New York. They surrounded Richard, forming a protective ring, and began backing him toward the exit. Enzo kicked open the terrace doors. The night air hit them like a sap. "To the cliffs," Enzo commanded. They ran through the gardens, the sound of shouting fading behind them. But as they reached the path to the boat cove, a shadow stepped out from the hedges. It was Luciana. And she wasn't holding a poison vial, she was holding a shotgun. "I always knew you were too soft, Enzo," she spat. "Hiding stray dogs, saving traitors." She raised the gun. "It ends here." Enzo shoved Sienna behind him. He had no weapon. He raised his hands. "Aunt Luciana, put it down. It's over. Grandfather is having a heart attack. Dante is shot. The police are already on their way. I called them an hour ago." "Police?" Lutana laughed maniacally. "I own the police." "Not the Italian police," Enzo said calmly. "Interpol." Luciana's eyes widened. "That's right," Enzo said, taking a step forward. "I've been building a case against the family for 5 years. Why do you think I kept Richard alive? He wasn't just a prisoner. He was a witness." Luciana's face twisted in fury. "You traitor! You destroyed your own family." "I destroyed a cancer," Enzo said. "Now drop the gun." Luciana screamed and pulled the trigger. Enzo lunged. Sienna screamed, "Enzo!" The gun went off. The blast illuminated the night sky. Both Enzo and Luciana fell to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Silence returned to the garden, broken only by the sound of the waves crashing below. "Enzo," Sienna whispered, crawling forward. "Enzo." He didn't move. The smoke drifted lazily into the humid night air. Sienna scrambled through the dirt, her red dress torn and stained, until she reached him. "Enzo!" He lay on the stone path, blood pooling beneath him. Sienna pressed the bunched satin of her dress hard against his wound. "Stay with me," she sobbed. "You don't get to die. You promised me a bonus. Remember, you can't die until you pay me." Enzo grimaced, his eyes fluttering. "Double. If you stop yelling, I'll yell all I want." Tears blurred her vision. "You noble, stupid idiot." Suddenly, sirens pierced the silence. A helicopter roared overhead, pinning them in a circle of blinding white light. Men in tactical gear swarmed the garden, not Moretti guards, but Interpol. "Secure the area," a voice boomed. "Medics go." As paramedics pulled Sienna away, a familiar voice spoke beside her. "He's in good hands, Sienna." It was her father. Richard had pulled down his hood. He looked exhausted, but free. "He called them," Richard revealed, watching as they loaded Enzo onto a stretcher. He spent 5 years gathering evidence against his own family. He traded the empire for immunity. Sienna for me, and for you. Sienna watched the ambulance disappear. The shark was gone. All that was left was the man. 3 weeks later, the hospital room in Zurich was quiet. Enzo was pale, sitting up in bed, but the predator's edge was returning to his eyes. "Where is Luciana?" he asked, his voice raspy. "Prison?" Sienna said, sitting by the window. "Along with Dante. Your grandfather died that night of heart failure. The Moretti Empire is gone. Enzo seized. You're a broke ex-billionaire. Enzo smirked. Is that a problem? You said you didn't care about the money. I have to care now. She sighed. I have a sister to support, and an unemployed boyfriend. Enzo froze. Boyfriend? Sienna walked to the bed, leaning over him. Unless the contract is still void. Technically, I'm still your fiancé. Enzo reached out his hand, cupping her cheek. The contract was destroyed the moment I fell in love with you, he whispered. Which was the moment you told me not to dare you. He opened the bedside drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside sat a vintage sapphire ring. My grandmother's eye, he said. The only clean thing I have left. Will you marry me? For real this time? Sienna looked at the ring, then at him. I don't know, she teased through her tears. I usually only date guys who tip well. I'll tip you in lifetime devotion, he offered. Deal. 1 year later, the small bistro on the Amalfi coast was packed. The sign out front read, Elagio the Courage. Sienna moved through the tables, radiant in a simple white dress. Excuse me, a customer snapped, waving a hand. He was a wealthy tourist in an expensive suit. This glass, it has a smudge. Flashbacks hit her. The club, the fear. But this time she didn't freeze. She smiled and replaced the glass effortlessly. I am so sorry, sir, she said. From the kitchen, Enzo stepped out, wearing a chef's apron flower on his hands. He crossed his arms, watching her with a grin. And sir, Sienna whispered to the customer, her eyes flashing with blue fire, don't dare me to kick you out because I own the place. The man paldered and gulped his wine. Sienna winked at Enzo, who laughed a sound of pure freedom. He caught her by the waist as she passed. Bossy, he murmured against her lips. Just keeping you in line, chef, she replied. They had lost the billions. They didn't have the power of a city behind them. But as the sun set over the Mediterranean, Sienna looked at the life they had built from the ashes. She knew without a doubt that she was the richest woman in the world, and that is how a waitress with nothing to lose brought a billionaire to his knees. Not by serving him, but by saving him. Enzo thought he could buy a performance, but he ended up paying with his heart. They lost the fortune, but they found a wealth that no bank account could ever hold freedom. Wow, what a finale. Do you think Enzo did the right thing by giving up the empire, or should he have tried to keep the money? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of fierce women and redeemed bad boys, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you never miss the next twist. Thanks for watching.